Professor, how important it is to remind people of the Holocaust?
Well, it's important that we remember horrors too terrible to be believed, but not too terrible to have happened, so that the words never again are not simply a slogan, because tragically it has happened again and again and again, but that we translate words into deeds, and that we undertake our individual and collective responsibility to ensure that such atrocities do not happen anywhere again.
And do you think that anti-Semitism is a real problem right now in Europe and in USA?
Well, you know, I remember 2 years ago I was visiting here in Birkenau, Auschwitz, and I went to the barracks in Auschwitz. I think it was Barrack 27, and if you go in there, then you see it says 1.3 million people were murdered here in Auschwitz between 1942 and 1945. 1.1 million of them were Jews. So let there be no mistake about it. Jews were murdered at Auschwitz because of anti-Semitism. But anti-Semitism, tragically, did not die at Auschwitz. And as we've learned only too well, that while it begins with Jews, it doesn't end with Jews. And we're experiencing today, yet again, an old, new, global, escalating, sophisticated, and virulent anti-Semitism. We have a responsibility to speak up and speak out against this anti-Semitism, because once it rears its ugly head, it engulfs everyone.
And right now we are sitting in Krakow, Poland, and right now there's a war going on in Ukraine, our neighbor. And in Ukraine there is a growing support for neo-Nazi movements such as Right Sector or Misanthropic Division. Do you think that such far-right neo-Nazi movements can be a real threat to our democratic Western society?
Well, I think that, you know, if we do not establish and maintain and protect democratic rule of law, rights protecting societies, then you will see the growth of either radical movements on the right, or you will see radical movements, you know, on the left, and then you'll see different manifestations of racism and hatred. So what we need to do with respect to the Ukraine and elsewhere is we need to promote rule of law, democratic societies, and we need to hold countries like Russia, who seek to effectively perpetrate crimes against the Ukrainian people in the illegal seizure of the Crimea, or in seizing Ukrainian citizens and bringing them to Russia and having them stand trial in Russia. We have to hold Putin's Russia, because I don't want to blame the Russian people. We have to hold Putin's Russia to account to their international agreements, in the same way that we have to hold the Ukrainian authorities and every other democracy to account for adherence to the rule of law.
Right, and do you think that we are doing enough to remind people of the horrors of Holocaust right now?
I don't think we are doing enough because we engage too much in sloganeering and not enough in deeds. You know, we speak a lot, as they say, of never again, yet it has happened again and again and again. And so it's understandable that young people become cynical even about the teachings of the Holocaust when they hear words never again, and then they look around and they see it in Syria, 500,000 that have been murdered, 12.5 million displaced, close to 5 million refugees. What we need to do is engage in the responsibility to protect to begin with. You know, in 2012, 1 year after the peaceful demonstrations began in Syria, and the initial young people were disappeared, those who came to support them were gunned down. Assad began his scorched earth policy. At the end of 1 year, in 2012, because the demonstrations began, peaceful ones, in Dara, South Syria in 2011. At the end of 1 year, there were quote-unquote only 7,000 dead, quote-unquote only 25,000 that were displaced and the like. And those of us who saw what was happening at the time said, you know, when you have a situation in any country of war crimes and crimes against humanity, as were occurring then daily in Syria, and the government of the day, the Syrian government, is not only unwilling or unable to do anything about it, but is the author of those crimes, then there's a responsibility on behalf of the international community to intervene and protect the innocent Syrian civilians. And when we were saying that, we were told, well, you know, if you intervene, this will lead to sectarian warfare, this will lead to civil war, this will lead to jihadists coming in. Everything we were told would happen if we intervened happened because we didn't intervene. These are the dangers of indifference and inaction in the face of mass atrocity. And so we have to undertake our responsibility to protect and undertake our responsibility to intervene on behalf of those who are being slaughtered in the name of some particular ideology or a criminal regime, as is taking place in Syria today.
Right, so I think we can agree that institutions such as Jagiellonian Center for Holocaust Studies should exist. And what do you think should be the main point of focus for them?
Well, I think that the Jagiellonian Center for Holocaust Studies has a particularly important responsibility because of its historical place of memory and understanding. And I think it needs to share the fundamental lessons of the Holocaust. The first is the importance in the Jagiellonian University, the importance of remembrance itself, of le devoir de mémoire, the duty of remembering. It was the Czech novelist Milan Kundera who said that the struggle of freedom against tyranny is a struggle of memory against forgetting. And we have to understand that 6 million Jews murdered, millions of non-Jews who were murdered, are not just a matter of abstract statistics. Unto every person there was a name, every person had an identity, every person had a universe, and here's where Jagiellonian University can impart the message that if you save a single person, it is as if you've saved an entire universe, but if you kill a single person, it is as if you've killed an entire universe. And so the first imperative is that we are each, wherever we are, the guarantors of each other's destiny. Two other lessons I think that Jagiellonian University, and it has been doing this, this is the kind of messaging we need to do, is that the Holocaust and the other genocides that followed occurred not simply because of the machinery of death, but because of state-sanctioned incitement to hate and genocide. It's this teaching of contempt, this demonizing of the other, this is where it all begins. As the Supreme Court of Canada put it, the Holocaust did not begin in the gas chambers. It began with words. And we have to understand with regard to Rwanda that it began with incitement, and we did not hold those who were engaged in that incitement to account. And this brings me to the third and last lesson, and that's the danger of indifference and inaction, the conspiracies of silence in the face of mass atrocity and genocide. No, the horror of the Holocaust and what happened, the genocide in Rwanda, commemorating now the 22nd anniversary of the horror of the genocide in Rwanda, where 1 million Rwandans, mostly Tutsis, were murdered in less than 3 months, 10,000 a day. But what makes that genocide and the Holocaust so horrific and so unspeakable is not just the horror of the genocide. That is bad enough. What makes it so unspeakable is that those genocides were preventable. Nobody could say we did not know. We knew, but we did not act. Just as with regard to Darfur, we knew, but we did not act. With regard to Syria, we knew, but we did not act. So the message from Jagiellonian University has to be, in that sense, the importance of acting, the importance of internalizing and acting upon the responsibility to protect.